Next up is John N. Street. John's been a big part of helping us put all this together. He's done all kinds of creative things. And this guy knows what he's doing in putting a production together. Many of you know John's parents, Bob and Paula, who are sitting right there in front of me, who have been full-time May to October hardcore cottagers for the past 20 years. What you're going to see today is what happens when you put a cool toy, great knowledge, a great eye, and a love for the river all together. Take it away, John.
Wow. I got to say thank you very much, Ken, for that. It's accolades beyond my station, I believe might be the way to put it, but happy to share without a doubt. And I want to say thank you to Charlie for your informative talk. I mean, no matter how long I've been on the river, it seems like there's always something new to learn. And you shared a whole bunch of new stuff. I think I'm gonna have to go back and watch your presentation again. If truth be told, I'm sitting there probably nervous thinking about myself more than I probably should be, and I probably need to redigest what it was you shared, and I'd love to learn from you. I want to say thank you to Peter Fitton for putting together this very organized meeting. I think you guys have done an absolutely awesome job. Thanks to the entire board for inviting me along to share some time with you today. We're going to look through some photos together, but you know, even more, I have kind of a different viewpoint on photography, especially in the Thousand Islands. One of the primary reasons to me that makes this region so special is the long-lasting friendships, the deep friendships that are developed often through multiple generations. And the best way to reconnect with friends who you only see for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks a year, or meet new friends if you're interacting with different parts of the river, is to share stories. Right? Stories are a common thread. We identify with each other through the telling of stories. And to me, photography is primarily a visual story medium. My talk today is meant to help us get to know each other, to find a way to share some common interests. So it'll be a lot more probably about me and my life and funny things that we've done than you would see for most photographers, because I don't really think of myself as a photographer. I think of myself as someone who likes having a camera in his hand and then likes telling stories afterwards. Even if I'm not asked to, I tend to tell some stories. So I'm hoping that what comes out of this is that you'll share your stories, your photos with friends and families whenever possible. And I think it helps grease the rails to building these friendships, especially, like I said, the multi-generational ones. So here we go. I guess I got to say special thanks to David Orr. David Orr cornered me in the Gann Marina at the end of last season. This is a smiling face that I think a lot of you are very familiar with. When David buttered me up with some of his favorite charisma, he then said, "Hey, John, I think you should speak at next year's TIA meeting." Now, for the first 50 years that I've known David, he's been quite the jokester. So I kind of smiled and nodded, kind of like as you do, you know, and politely chalked it up to being the very friendly, very complimentary guy that he is. Until Ken White called me up and convinced me to be brave enough to face all of your scary faces. For those of you who don't recognize me with this fancy headset on, this is not actually having anything to do with Zoom. It's just I want to be on the river so bad that it's my poker run starter kit. Like I'm gonna find a way to get into one of these boats, and I figure if the more people can see me wearing one of these, maybe next year I'll have a chance to be on the river and, you know, get a ride in like one of these speed demons, like I'm like my way, you know. Look at the heat that thing is putting off as it flies past. I mean, that thing is flying. And as they say, a picture's worth 1,000 words, right? But what I've learned doing this is that it doesn't necessarily tell the truth. So for example, in this photo, if you look closely, look at these guys in the jet stream behind my way. I mean, it looks like they're so close, they could just step out onto the transom of the boat. Why aren't they bracing themselves for the wake that's probably just about to knock them over? Well, the truth is, they're not very close. It's just an optical illusion caused by the telephoto lens. I mean, our eye doesn't do that. These telephoto lenses do something that humans don't do, which is they compress distant things to make them look closer. And it works the opposite on wide angle lens. If you've ever taken a picture with a GoPro or even an iPhone, you know that things that are close actually look like they're really far away. You try to take a picture of a bird with your phone and you can't even see the bird afterwards because it looks like it's really far away, even though it was pretty close to you at the time. So in any case, these guys are at a much safer distance than they actually look like they are. I had fun learning this kind of stuff because I'm a bit of a geek and I'm not a professional photographer. You know, I guess what I do during my day job is you can find me directing corporate events if we ever start doing them again, or helping out on the set of TV shows like Nickelodeon's iCarly many years ago. Some of you may have known that show, your kids knew that show. Or sometimes with a camera in my hand, whether it's in the water or under the water or above ground, you know, but I'm always the one behind the camera, never in front of it. So in fact, this is my first presentation ever. Like I've never had to give a sales pitch to anybody with a presentation. I've never had to give a talk about anything. I've somehow managed to, until bumping into David Orr, have managed to deduct that responsibility. So please be gentle with me. I directed an event with Jay Leno one time, and I was kind of knowing that I was going to need to talk more. And so you're always backstage trying to think of something smart to ask somebody who's famous, like not be like the total normal stupid comment. And so I made a total normal stupid comment, and I said, "Hey, you know, how do you keep so calm with all these people watching you?" And he's the most prolific public speaker in America. Like when he was doing the Tonight Show, he was also speaking 300 engagements a year. So he would go in and do a nonprofit event and then fly and do the Tonight Show and then go do another event, fly and do the Tonight Show. Anyway. So what do you think he said? You know, he said the simple answer is like for me to be sitting here thinking of you guys, I see you on my gallery view, is to think of every single one of you with life jackets on, right? Right. So, well, okay, he didn't say life jackets, but you know, safety is important to us. It's important to the organization. It's important to me personally. Like I look back on things we did with our kids and I think, hey, I probably could have been a lot safer parent than I was, you know? And I know that there's a lot of concern about safety these days in general on the river, you know, that we've done the job of keeping the Americans on their side and the Canadians on their side so we don't get a little too much mixing going on. But maybe the number one thing we can all do to make sure that we're safe is to make sure your family, your loved ones, your guests on your boat are wearing a life jacket. And I know I'm being silly, but it is a serious topic to me, and it's an important one to the TIA. And it kind of comes up also with photography, because if you're around the Thousand Islands taking pictures, then what tends to happen is you kind of get all consumed with your camera. And you tend to forget some of the other responsibilities. It's very much like watching most of the teenagers we know texting as they're walking across the street. And you think, how does that person still make it without getting hit? And on the water, it can be the same thing. There's a lot of stuff going on that we're not processing if we're thinking about chasing an eagle who's flying away fast, or if we're thinking about something else. So I want to say thank you guys to everybody for all that you do to support TIA's river safety programs, like the shoal markers that we all know and love. You know, I mean, it's important, and thank you for helping. So what does all that have to do with photography? Not a lot, I guess. I mean, photography to me, like I said before, they're visual images that tell a story. And I think in my perspective, and that's kind of what I'm sharing today, is like, who am I, right? This is not, let me show you my gallery of photos. That's not who I am. This is more like, hey, let me show you some pictures that let you know a little bit more about who I am. And it makes it easier for us to talk when we get together. It makes it easier for us to say, hey, you know who you should talk to? You should see so-and-so and so-and-so. Or I got a great photo of the same thing. You should see it. It's just a way to bond together. So sometimes these images, when they're telling a story, you have to be really quiet and still in order to hear it. And notice it. And it's a little bit like what Charlie said about looking down to see the butterflies when you've been looking up to see the birds. And sometimes that's one of the nice side effects of doing photography, is it's a chance to be quiet and still a little bit, and to try to hear a story that you may not have heard otherwise or heard before. Sometimes it's your story, the one you're trying to make, like the ability to go out and I want to take a picture of an osprey and I want to try to get it in really sharp focus, you know, and that's a challenge to it, right? You got to learn how to work your camera and work the lighting, and Then one day you get this shot and you're like, wow, it looks exactly like what I expected. That's okay. That's a good story you got. Sometimes it's a creepy story. Like, what the heck is with the reflection of this goose? Is this like the goose of Sleepy Hollow? Is this like the poltergoose? I mean, is this the ghost that I hear making creepy noises in the marsh after the moon sets? Does that look at the top of his head reflecting in the water? Doesn't it look like a skull or a skeleton or something? Something eerie. I mean, who knows? So you take your pictures, and afterwards, sometimes it says something different than you thought when you were taking the picture. Sometimes it's completely unexpected. Who knew bumblebees were so dang fuzzy, right? And is that its tongue? Like, is it literally licking the nectar from the flower? I mean, I guess that makes sense, right? But it's funny that you can see it. And the cameras these days are getting so much better that they see things that we cannot see. We don't see them when we take the photo. They go home later and say, hey, look what this is. Look what I just discovered. Like this dragonfly. This is like a, I don't know, he looks like an alien creature from outer space. You look at the grid of grooves on that compound eye, you know, he's telling some story that I didn't even know existed at the time. But as my kids will tell you, if I ever tell a story, it's definitely not going to be a short one. And that's kind of what led me in a lot of this direction. When Ken said, can I show you some of my photos, or can you show some of my photos at the meeting? And I thought, why me? Like, I'm not a photographer. I'm just a dad who likes taking pictures. It's what I do in my hobby, but it's not like I'm some photographer, right? A lot of the time, I end up taking shots that look like this. Missed it by that much, right? That osprey looks like he wants to swoop down and show me just how to use a dang camera. Like, point left a little bit, John. To me, I mean, a photographer, I loved hearing what Peter said about Ian Korstein earlier, because a photographer is someone like Ian Korstein to me, someone who's devoted a big portion of their life to creating these iconic images of this region that we all love. I mean, he would publish those books that were full of nothing but perfect photos. But to this day, I open up a book, the first one I got, and it still makes me feel awe when I see them. And that's a real, that's someone who's put deep effort and has a natural talent behind it. It's something where we all kind of connect with it. It's a story that we all feel, but we couldn't put into words ourselves. And when he shows us those pictures, that suddenly we get that feeling to understand that story. I have a very deep respect for Ian and for the level of talent he had. The commitment he made to contributing to our community past his own success in selling his products, he had a spirit of contribution. And I think that part of that made us all have more of a common bond through our love that we all shared as Thousand Islands. It's kind of like he would make these images that we all love that image. Right, it all represents what was important to us. In 2002, when my parents had recently retired and they were going to go and do a major renovation on the family cottage, the cottage that had been built in the 1950s by my dad and his granddad, Ian was kind enough to get up really early one morning on a calm day and do a flyby of our place and take a photo for us, just to have a memory of what was the place like before. Because things move and they change, and then we kind of forget. We knew they were different, but we kind of forget what's different. And he and his little signature at the bottom of it, you know, just for the Street family, took this photo, and it's something that I know that we'll keep for a while, and it's preserving the memory of what my dad and granddad built together 70 years ago. So that's some of what someone like him does, and we can aspire to do some of it, but I'm just saying, me personally, I'm more about, hey, I'd like to get to know everybody on this gallery view I'm looking at. And by me posting photos on social media, you get to know me a little bit, and then it starts a conversation, and it makes it easier for us to talk, and you know, we'll build a friendship over the years. For me, when Ken asked me to come up with a title of the talk, I was like, oh gosh, what the heck? I mean, I've never had a talk. I don't know how to title a talk that I've never had. But I think of when I was a kid and pulling into GAN, and we'd always see that sign over the entryway to GAN, so your gateway to the Thousand Islands. And for me, photography was that. Like, the reason I started taking photos beyond wanting to take pictures of my kids was that when I'm at my office working away, I want to see a slideshow on the other computer screen, reminding me I'm not just sitting in a dark room by myself, that I've done these fun things. And so it like is a gateway to bring me back. So the photos that I love are the ones that remind me of a story that took me back to the day I took them. The photo itself couldn't be a bad photo, but it's a good story because it was a good day. And so I think that my encouragement to everybody here is don't get hung up on a bad photo. Get excited about sharing a good day and having other people get a little piece of it. So I look at this photo as one of my favorites, even though I think it's probably only my favorite. But I look at this photo as heron standing in the pouring rain. And that's Bill Hale's cottage right behind him in the background. And I remember being just drenched. Like I'm sitting there on the rocks on the edge of our little shore, looking across this little channel and seeing this calm, relaxed heron just sitting there, like literally soaking it in, right? And I was kind of hoping my camera was going to hold up in the rain like they said it would, and it did. And it relaxed me, you know, and picture the sounds that you hear right now. Like everybody here that's on this call knows the sound that I heard that day, which is that rush, that whoosh, that pouring rain on the surface of the river, and everything else is quiet. There is no bobolink there is no, sorry, I forget which the bird was, which sparrow it was that was imitating grasshoppers, the grasshopper sparrow, the grasshopper something or other, because everything is quiet. The rain quiets it all down except for the sound of that rain. And it's a relaxing thing. And I guess, you know, you get to this time of life and sometimes having a relaxing thing like that's a good thing to have. The thing I didn't really expect is the photos have become a way to bond with others in this community. Like we have a shared love of this place. I shared my pictures with people and make them laugh or make them intrigued, or suddenly they get quiet as they're perceiving something for themselves. It's reminding them of something that they did or saw or witnessed. In that moment, I feel like we're building a little shared history. You know, you remember if you've seen a deer on your island that was aware you were there, wasn't sure if it needed to run away or not. And in this moment, you look at this deer and you remember that feeling you had that morning. Like, oh, wow, look what just happened. And that's a cool thing. When people share the photos they love, or even when they point out things in my photos that I hadn't seen, it makes me feel the same bond back to them. So that's my purpose today, to share some fun moments, to build our bond a little bit closer, even though we're far apart, and to encourage you to get out there with your camera, have fun doing it. It's ironic that taking a photo is one of the best ways of giving to a bunch of other people in this group. You know, take a photo and share it. It's a great way to give. 2,500 years ago, there was this Greek philosopher who said, in Greek, I'm sure not how I wrote it, but said, "No man ever steps in the same river twice. For it's not the same river, and he is not the same man." It's entirely possible that 2,500 years ago, this guy might have been talking about the water levels. I mean, I think it's probably not the case. You know, it could have been the high water, low. It's not the same river every year. I don't really think that's it, but you never know. I know some of the other talks came with disclaimers like legal things. Mine always needs to come with a humor disclaimer because there's things that I think are funny that nobody else does, and that's totally okay. I just need to disclaim that probably in advance. And I'm just kidding about it. I mean, the water level is serious, but I mean, just joking around about this thought about this guy knew something 2,500 years ago that's still true today, right? Which is that to us, this river has always been there. Right, it connects different chapters of our lives. It connects the different generations within our family, but it's always changing. It's providing something different every time we return. Something's different every time we return. Either your dock has moved because of the ice, or you know, some new shoreline got exposed, or something is different. And by the way, in this shot, if you haven't walked this span of the TI Bridge yet, it's a great thing to do on a sunny day. You know, you park just south of the bridge on Hill Island at the Border Mall gift shop area there, and turn around and walk back. There's a real low bridge right over Twail. And if you're feeling up for a view, just continue on to the higher bridge. It's a nice, safe, guardrailed area. It's easy to do, but it's a beautiful day. Like this is our region. This is our area. My family, real quick, this is the getting to know me part. Sorry, my family's history with the Thousand Islands. I mean, a lot of you know me as I live in California, but we were Canadian not too long ago. It began when J.R. Street, the son of a farmer from Palmyra down by Hamilton, married Rose Northcott, the 9th child of John Northcott. My name's John Northcott Street, so I'm from that line. And he was somebody who emigrated from England to Kingston, Ontario in the mid-1850s, and married. This is Rose, who he married. They purchased a great little plot of land on Bostwick, surrounded on 3 sides by water. Their first cottage was a tent. My grandfather is in the, I mean, what is that? Is that a stroller? Like a perambulator? Well, that's my grandpa John and his 2 older brothers. They built a cottage for their summer getaways, and Jacob moved the family to the U.S. in the early 1900s. 1905, became a naturalized U.S. citizen and accepted a teaching position, eventually as a dean at Syracuse University. And my granddad, who was born in Belleville, who's right here, continued spending his summers on the island. Each morning, he ran up to the other side of the Bostwick to get milk from the Bostwick farm. And today, there's still a footpath that's worn in the side of the hill. I don't have a picture of it. I wish I did. I'd love to share it with you. But there's a footpath, a groove from this granddad who passed away before I was born, from running across the island to get milk in the morning. I think that's kind of cool. He raised his own family, grew up, went to the cottage every summer. This is my dad. He's teaching my dad to row, you know, in the family skiff. And the visitors would come by water taxi into the back dock. Some of you were cottagers when the water taxis were a big deal. You're seeing in the background there the Armstrong family cottage on Sans Souci Island. In the 50s, my grandpa bought the land adjacent to the first cottage, and along with my dad and his teenage son, Bob, they built this cabin up on the bluff. And I mean, I can't imagine back in those days trying to break some of these boulders I mean, I don't know the tools that they had to do this stuff with, but it's kind of crazy to think of the amount of effort that went into making what we take, not for granted, but we take pleasure in every year. And sometimes it looks like they did the same thing we did. Looks like they sat on the dock and looked out at that island where Peter and Tori live. It was the Jamesons at the time, right? But it kind of looks the same. It looks different, but it kind of looks the same. So we do some of those shared things today too. The kids were crazy like they always were. This is my dad goofing around on water skis like the kids did at that time. He's palling around with David Orr and Robin Orr and those guys. This is me learning to row at the same dock he learned to row at. And me and my friends would go fishing, and my mom was a good enough sport that she would teach us to clean all the perch that we were so happy to catch. By the way, the guy in the blue slicker, that's Scott Hansen. You may know him as the guy that built Rossiter Boats into this major nationwide brand, and these days he's running Limestone, actually. So I think that sometimes once the river gets in your blood, being around it and being in it and supporting it sticks with you. It's in your blood. Someone suggested when I was a kid, the bright idea, if I rode the skiff hard enough, I might be able to tow my brother on some sort of board. I'm not sure what that is. I think it's good to know I'm not the only one ornery enough to convince my kids to try these dumb ideas, right? So what was it like? We built docks, we went water skiing, you know, and then our own kids came along, and we would. So for me, I'm raising the 5th generation of streets on the St. Lawrence, teaching them important things like how to build s'mores, right? But it's kind of the same in nature. Like the little ones learn it from the big ones who learn the same way, right? So you go out and you take a picture and you say, huh, I guess I never really thought about the whole monkey see, monkey do aspect of how does a loon learn to do something. And they just imprint, that's probably the wrong biological word, but they copycat. You know, they do what the parent does. And the parent's trying to show them what to do. And it's not that different than what we go through. So I think it's fun for me. I enjoy seeing parallels. I enjoy seeing patterns in nature that we kind of forget we're these natural critters also, and that maybe some of the things we do because all animals do them, right? We get together with our friends. You know, there's a bunch of people on the Zoom call tonight that were on that point that you're seeing there on Hemlock Island in the 1990s, who were having a cookout and communing and getting to know each other and being from all sorts of different places. It's part of what we do here. For me and my kids, I would teach them how to sail. Like we went on the Hobie Cat together and teach them how not to sail. I have to take a pause here and give a big shout out again to David Orr and to Bill Hale, who probably rescued me as a teenager more times than they even thought would be possible as I sailed this boat out into 40 acres in winds that were beyond my skill level. And as my daughters can attest to, I apparently didn't learn that lesson, and I still tip over with them. The funny thing about these last 3 shots is they're not actually still photos. They're freeze frames from our video camera. My wife was on our deck and she couldn't see what was happening. So she got the video camera and zoomed way in so she could see like a pair of binoculars. And she was laughing her butt off. She could barely hold this camera still. The 2 big flowers on my bathing suit looked like 2 big bare butt cheeks. And she was convinced I had lost my drawers when we tipped over, and she was laughing into the camera. I'm so sorry, honey, but I got to keep filming this, you know? I mean, it's silly memories like this, but it's things that we've all done something else. I was like, I didn't lose my pants. I had my pants on. You've seen this before. Apparently, she doesn't look at that part of my pants very often. I don't know. When we taught her to use the big camera, things got really fun because then she was able to start to catch some of the local wildlife as it flew by, like our kids on the tube. You know, we would drive them around, and suddenly, as soon as we could take pictures, this might have been one of the things that really got me hooked on taking pictures with a nicer camera, because you just can't do that with your iPhone. You know, you can't see these things, these precious moments of, hey, Dad, are my skis supposed to cross like this? You know? Pretty soon after this little era, my family kind of voted to give me some alone time exploring the river with my camera. I'm not sure why they didn't want me driving the boat for them anymore, but they kind of ushered in the new era. They said the worst thing about success is a little bit. In the first year I had the decent camera, I stumbled across this bald eagle swooping down out of a tree and somehow managed to get the camera up in time to snap this photo. I don't think I'd ever seen a bald eagle on the river before. And then herons kind of became my next best friend. I mean, they're really skittish, but they're big and they're relatively slow. So they're really great subjects to practice photography on. Your camera focuses on them pretty well. They just don't move fast. These tiny birds, man, it's astounding how you just don't realize how great your eye is at following stuff, that if you have to follow it with a hand motion and a mechanical piece of gear, it just doesn't work as well. So have fun with the herons. I challenge you, if you take heron photos, try not to get only photos of herons flying away from you. Everybody now has 1,000 photos of heron butts, right? The back of their feet, because it means you scared them and they're flying away from you. And as I was starting to think, hey, I want to get a different looking photo than this, and it made me start to wonder, why am I seeing only this? Well, it's because they were scared. Oh, geez, I'm stressing them out. I'm scaring them. How do I take a good picture and get close without putting stress on them? And that's something to work on when you're out there. It's like, how do I participate, get this really cool story without impacting the environmental side of what we're doing, right? This isn't just I'm not just collecting playing cards here, right? These are animals that have a habitat that I want to make sure that I'm not interrupting too much. Next thing with photography is pretty much anything you do with a sunrise or sunset, you're kind of an instant expert. You know, the magic formula, I don't know if I've ever heard anybody else say it, the formula is find something really pretty, point your camera at it, and press the button. And the rest of it makes you look like a genius. The sunsets in this area, they can be gorgeous. The sunrises, they can be gorgeous. I mean, it's really a unique place that we have a chance to be part of. So, of course, by this time I've got all sorts of fancy gizmos, right? I even have a lightning trigger. What's a lightning trigger? Well, supposedly it's this complex piece of gear that will like sense the lightning strike as it's starting to strike. And in just like microseconds will tell your camera to fire off a photo exactly the right moment. Like, how is it ever possible to, take a picture of a storm before they had these lightning triggers? So I'm there on the porch, attaching all the cables, stabilizing the tripod. Meanwhile, I mean, it's looking dark, right? It's starting to rain. I'm starting to get wet. The wind's shaking the tripod. And Melissa walks up. She says, "Hey, honey, what you doing? Gonna take a lightning picture?" maybe I will too. So like she points her iPhone 4, like her iPhone 4 out the window and blam, an enormous lightning strike. She pushes the button on her phone at the right time and snaps this photo and says, oh, nice, and walks away. Meanwhile, like I'm soaking wet, I've got no lightning photo at all. And hey, you know what? It ain't all about being all that. Sometimes just be there and take your pictures and have fun doing it, and you know, some fun things happen. Luckily, after putting away my lightning trigger, the next couple of years, I was able to, in a bunch of storms, get some really fun lightning shots. And there's something dramatic about storms, and where we live in San Diego, they don't really have this type of huge temperature variant and huge humidity variant that causes stuff like this to happen. That's one of the things when we go there and we hear that thunder roll over the roof and you feel the roof shingle shake a little bit. You go, ooh, okay, I know I'm at my happy place, right? So it's fun for me to take pictures of the lightning stuff because it just makes you feel small, you know. Sometimes the problem with lightning is it's so bright, it just bleaches out. When you finally get a good one, it just bleaches out the whole camera just about. You can see a couple of places on this photo, there's little circles, little discs on the edge. Those are all raindrops. So the reason there's raindrops on the lens is it's time for a safety warning again. It's not the life jacket kind, it's the don't be out in lightning kind. I mean, these storms are no joke. There's no time to react if you're caught in a storm. So you want to, any photos you see me post at all ever of lightning stuff, they were either taken from indoors. I was in a room with the screen door propped open, shooting out of the house, but I was inside the house. Or I went down to the dock or the deck and I set the camera up and I set it on automatic. Let's take a picture every 30 seconds and let it go. And I'll come back at the end of the storm and find out, is my camera still on the dock or did it blow off? And are there any good pictures on it? It's just not worth trying to be that teenage texter walking across the street who's forgetting that this is nature and can jack you up pretty good. Once you start going out at night to take a picture, it's kind of fun taking pictures other times of night, like on calmer evenings. I like long exposure photography sometimes because your human eye only, it's dark out, you think it's dark out. Well, it's only dark because you can't absorb enough light. You let your camera absorb light for 30 seconds, it's as bright as day. Like, this looks like a daytime shot, but if you look up at the top, you'll see stars. And you can look downriver and see the bridge lights are on. And you can see lights over on Juniper, it looks like, in somebody's house. So this is a nighttime photo. Flat, calm, beautiful night. As long as the mosquitoes aren't too bad, nighttime photography is a lot of fun. This one's an old school selfie. I just put the camera on a tripod and set the self timer for 10 seconds, ran down to the dock and sat totally still until I thought I was done taking the photo. You know, it's just a shot of me sitting on the dock enjoying the evening. And this was one of those, this is something I wanted to take. It was intentional. I say, I enjoy my evening. I want to go and sit and do this. I show other people and they're like, yeah, I like to do that too. Not the taking photo part, the sitting on the dock and enjoying the evening and just being with my thoughts. If you take long exposures of the stars, you get to feel the Earth spin. Like, we all know the Earth is turning, but we don't really think about it that often. We certainly don't see the stars move. But if you take a picture for 30 minutes, the stars move a lot. And it gives a sense of motion. Like, it's suddenly you feel like it's not a still night, it's a busy night. And if you take it the other way, I've always heard that the North Star stays still. But you don't really know that, right? Until you take a long exposure photo like this and you see that star. Like you did spin art in grade school or something. It's like a pin is in the sky right there, and the rest of it's spinning around that. You know, earlier I said something about long stories. I just looked at my little timer clock. I'm like, have I really been talking for 30 minutes? Because I could be here for hours, unfortunately, and we should probably not tie everybody up with this. But as you can tell, I love telling stories about stuff. I saw Nicole Harris here a little bit earlier. Oops, let me go back one. This is their island. I was trying to shoot the moonrise, and somebody walked outside with a flashlight while I was shooting the moonrise, and they walked around the porch. And you can't see the person because it's a long exposure photo, and they didn't stay in one place. But you can see the flashlight. Looks like some high-tech, glowing, fun thing. So I don't think that there's anything else that's super crucial. I was going to show you a couple funny things, but I am way over time already. I think probably because Charlie was gracious enough to share with me some of his extra time by being super fast ahead of time. So I kind of just want to say thank you guys very much for your time and your interest in this stuff. I do have to share one funny story. This is the last one. Okay. So I like going out shooting ospreys, and I'm trying to be sensitive to people, to the wildlife, and so I'm not driving after them so much anymore. I think where they're going to be, I drive upwind of them, turn the engine off, and let the boat drift into place. Problem is, you start taking a picture of these things, and they look really close, like really close. Now, they're not quite that close, but they look like they're about to bite your head off, right? And so I'm looking at this osprey who's upset with something, and all of a sudden, right from over my head, something dive bombed me from behind. I was like, I mean, instant panic. Like, what the heck was that? And the only thing I could see was a seagull off in the distance. And I thought, it can't be a seagull, but I must have drifted into his territory, because that thing pulled a U-turn and started heading back at me. So I took a photo of it, right? And it started coming in on me. And then it opened its mouth and started to yell at me so loud. And it's funny, because like the lizard part of my brain that still exists back there was convinced this thing's going to eat me. Like, I was more scared of this seagull than I was of that dang osprey. And I mean, look at the look on his face. Like, it is doing everything it can. And to me, I felt like I was in the middle of a channel in a boat drifting with the wind. I wasn't chasing it. It was nothing, you know? Here's the last shot as it went zooming over my head. It like did a close flyby, barely my head, I think, but between its legs on the way. And I said, you know, I think I'll start the engine and drive away now. Don't need to be scaring these guys anymore. So take some photos, share some stories with me. I want to hear yours, because I think that I get a rush out of that more than just about anything else, is have a chance to bond with people about this stuff. Thank you for giving me some time.